What's up, Raiders? Bionic here. Welcome to another Raid Shadow Legends video. It is that time to yet again do the list of top champions. I started this last year. I only did one version last year. It was called Top 15 Champions. It was also somewhat going over the meta, or the current meta at that time, right? So a lot of champions were not even in the game yet, and obviously this evolved over time. More recently this year, I started the version called Top 20 Champions. I did the number 1 for the first quarter of the year, then at some point I did number 2, and it increased to Top 25 Champions because it's getting harder and harder to select sort of like the best champions, or at least only 25 of them. This list could easily be 50 champions long, but the whole point here is to give you guys a balanced approach as to what I believe players want the most. Therefore, as you can see, that is why I have renamed it to Most Wanted. Yes, this is my personal opinion as well. It is also based on my observation of the last couple of months. So it's somewhat of a reflection of the last 3 months, but somewhat also like going forward, what you can expect to hope that is a game changer, right? Also, this list is meant to be balanced, okay? So it's not going to be all nukers or all like buff strippers, right? It is sort of like globally what you would want to have balanced teams to be able to do all the content in the game. What I've also done for you guys, and then we're going to look at it after, is that I've tabled all the previous versions of this video. So then we'll see sort of how it evolved over time and what was my reasoning for adding a champion or removing a champion, okay? All that being said, let's first jump into the game and then let's go over the champions. It's going to be really quick because you've heard these before. I don't want to bore you guys to death with all this, so I'm just going to probably just quickly mention them and why we really like them, right? Frozen Banshee, still on there. One of the few rares, excellent poisoner. I'll just leave it at that, right? Next one, we have Dark Elves, of course, Cold Heart, still there. Enemy max HP, 100% turn meter reduction. Still very, very important to have. The next one is, of course, one of our favorites, Apothecary. Triple hit A1, heal, increase speed, and turn meter increase. This in the beginning is a game changer, and that's pretty much it for the rares. Still only 3 on my list as the other 3 previous versions, okay? Then let's go over some of the epics in no particular order. Miscreated Monster. I think a lot of people look forward to getting a Miscreated Monster. He is great all around, ally protection, stun, shield, the whole thing. Then we have, of course, one of our favorites, one of the best buff strippers in the game, Madame Cerise. I still don't have one. We have AoE decreased defense, AoE decreased attack, removing all buffs, as well as block debuffs. I mean, so many things, right? She might as well be a legendary, literally. Then we have one of the champions mainly used for the unkillable teams against the clan boss, Man-Eaters. I think I have yet to get mine. I would really like to, but like he seems to be one of the go-to champions. There are legendary versions like Sir Nick, Rochard the Tower, or whatever. But because this guy is an epic, I'm going to say he's a little bit more accessible. Therefore, he's on the list and not the other guys, okay? Then we have, of course, our favorite AoE enemy max HP, at least my favorite, is Seer, as well as a buff stripper, right? Typically used for dungeons first. We don't really see her in arena, but she could serve that purpose as well if you manage to increase her accuracy on top of her offensive stats, right? I'm trying to do it, not easy. Then we have, of course, one of the champions that was accessible with the battle pass, Stag Knight. AoE decreased defense and decreased attack on a 3-turn cooldown, making him sort of like the step up from War Maiden, right? And between War Maiden and this guy, you're pretty much covered for all dungeons. Of course, Madame Cerise is better, but it's a 4-turn cooldown. This is a 3-turn cooldown. So I think that's why he really, really shines for this. Also excellent for the Fire Knight because of his double hit A1 decrease speed, right? Then we have a returning champion to this list who was sort of on and off, but it is Seeker. That turn meter increase for making those unkillables 2-to-1 ratio teams for the clan boss. Also see him a lot in the arena. Effective in dungeons as well. Effective in faction wars. I think Seeker deserves a spot. We have increased attack, turn meter increase, and then we have the passive to add the 60% increased defense, okay? Next one we're going to have is our, of course, another enemy max HP AoE. It is Royal Guard. So Royal Guard is probably the most accessible aside from Seer, and a lot of people will run 2 of them, right? So I'm not going to put 2 on the list, but I will say Royal Guard in general is there for that. Then we have what I believe now to be a better version of the decreased attack A1 champion. It is Sepulcher Sentinel. Because Sepulcher Sentinel brings something unique to the table, it is a combination of the decreased attack with the increased defense and the block debuffs on a 4-to-3 ratio for the clan boss. She does 3 jobs into 1. Really, really, really solid. In fact, I'm waiting to get one myself to redesign my clan boss team to step it up, right? So because of this though, I've taken Tyrell off the list. Don't hate me, I'm just saying I don't want to have too many redundant champions on my list, so I removed Tyrell because Sepulcher Sentinel is now on this list, all right? Well, she was there before, but I had Tyrell and Sepulcher Sentinel. I thought it was a little bit too much. And then finally for the epics, the next one, of course, are we're gonna say most accessible counterattack champion is Skull Crusher, right? Counterattack and ally protection, which in my opinion is almost a little bit better than Martyr in some cases. Again, don't hate me. I'm just saying, okay? This is my opinion, but I have both, and I find myself using Skull Crusher more. Also, once I get to the legendaries, you guys will understand, all right? Okay, now let's go into the legendaries. Obviously, there are more and more legendaries, but again, I wanted this list to be balanced, so it wasn't going to be 25 legendaries, right? I just wanted a little bit of everything. Okay, so the first one we're going to have is Michal. Ever since this guy was buffed, he is next level. This skill right here is just, you know, that's it. I'm not going to say more. And he hits really, really hard. So great champion overall. Everybody wants him. I would love to have him for sure. Then we have Trunda Guilt Mallet, one of the better nukers in the game. Stun and HP burn. She hits so hard. Probably one of the hardest hitting champions in the game. For that reason, she's on the list. Then we have, even though he was nerfed, I'm going to say he's still on there because of something I'll mention a little bit later, but it is Rotos. I think Rotos still deserves to be on this list. Very unique. The fact that he can ignore unkillable and block damage buffs makes him very viable in certain situations. We maybe don't see as much of him nowadays, but I still use mine quite a bit. In fact, I have 2 now. Okay, next one. We have, of course, the Duchess. She was going to be nerfed. She wasn't nerfed. She was buffed, nerfed. Anyway, a lot of things have changed for Duchess over time, but she remains on this list. I think her kit is very excellent overall. Block debuffs, increased attack, perfect Vel, the whole thing, a decent speed aura, not to mention the AoE revive, right? Then we have, what's the next one? Oh yes, of course. Everybody wants a Dracomorph, right? I still don't have one. AoE, decreased defense, and weaken, along with all the poisons. Also used quite a bit for the unkillable teams on the clan boss for max damage. See, he was nerfed a little bit on the A1, but he's still very viable because of the rest of his kit. Then we've got, and here's the reason why Martyr is not on my list, it is Valkyrie. I think Valkyrie is a little bit better than Martyr because of the way her shield works, okay? Counter attack as well. So she's unique in the game for providing one of the biggest shields with the counter attack, obviously, right? So for that reason, I did not put Martyr on, okay? So we've got the Valkyrie and the Skull Crusher. There was no reason to have the 3rd counter attack champion. Don't get me wrong, I said it again, I'll say it, Martyr is excellent. I use Martyr everywhere. She's maxed out. She's in my faction war. She's soloing Mino 15. Great champion, okay? But not on my list. Not for now. Then we've got, of course, one of my favorite champions, Battle Khazar. This guy is like the expert at soloing dungeons, Dragon 20, Mino 15. If you have the right stats on this guy, he can pull it off in a pretty decent time. We have the AoE cleanse, continuous heals, poisons on a 3-turn cooldown, not to mention the aura, not the aura, but the passive that adds poison or damage if the target is poisoned, right? Then we've got, of course, a champion that was briefly removed from the list last time, but I brought him back, and it's Torment. I think his passive continues to be one of the most annoying in the game, especially for the arena. I use mine all the time. I use mine in faction wars. I have used mine in dungeons quite a bit as well for crowd control. Really, really solid. Then we've got one champion that I didn't put on before, but I'm going to put him on now. It is Warlord. The ability to bypass the block debuffs, right? That buff that you add to block the debuffs, putting each target's skills on cooldown will bypass that, making him one of the most dangerous crowd control champions in the game, at least in my opinion. Then we've got the partner, of course, of Rotos. It is Sifi the Lost Bride. Even after this small nerf, she continues to be really, really solid. So I'm gonna say because she's there, then Rhodos continues to be there, right? Finally, we've got also the Hegemon for obvious reasons. You always go first, right into some crowd control. Really, really solid, very annoying to deal with. Not easy to counter is what I'm gonna put it at. And then finally, the last two would be, of course, Krisk the Ageless. I think he's such a well-rounded champion. Overpowered, to be honest, but like the way his passives work, the way he adds the shield on top of that, AoE provoke, AoE A1. I mean, this guy does it all. And finally, of course, still on this list, even though we all get her after a certain amount of time, I still think that she is one of the most wanted champions. It is Arbiter. Arbiter is the ultimate prize for the missions. And then there's a new ultimate prize for the faction wars, which I'll cover in a quick second. But first, let's go over this quick table here for you guys, okay? So again, kind of just mapped it out, and I'll quickly sort of like go over the initial version. You can see there was only 15 champions, and I had limited to 5 of each of the different rarities, right? Apothecary, Cold Heart have always been there. Then Bellower was kind of replaced with Frozen Banshee. Skull Crusher, always been there. Tyrell eventually kind of became Sepulcher Sentinel. Juliana used to be on my list, then it became Royal Guard. Then we had Gorgrab, but then Arbiter appeared, so I thought Gorgrab kind of like lost his shine because Arbiter is that much better, right? We had a Cult Brawler for a while as a Poisoner, but then Frozen Banshee kind of appeared, so it was redundant to have 2 of the, we'll say, best Poisoners in the game. So Seeker was brought back. Then we had Steel Skull for a while, eventually was dropped back. I had Sandlash Survivor a little bit on the last version, but I think that, you know, it's a great champion, don't get me wrong, but like I think there are somewhat better options now. Stag Knight kind of became pretty much front stage. Seer has been there for a while. Sepulcher Sentinel, as I said, was there. Then we added the Maneater recently. Madame Cerise, Miscreated Monster have been there for the last 2 series. As for the Legendaries, Arbiter and Krisk have been there forever. Hegemon appeared about 3 versions ago. Same thing with Sifi the Lost Bride. Will probably continue to be there. Venus was kind of dropped after a while because we have Dracomorph, which I find do somewhat of a similar role, and then Dracomorph is a little bit more accessible because he's not a void. Ray and Alton were there in the previous version because that decreased attack gain 1. That was a little bit of an error or an oversight on my part because Michal had already been buffed, so like those 2 were removed. Warlord was added, Torment was brought back, Battle Khazar has been there since the beginning. Martyr was there on the first version. That is before Valkyrie got buffed, okay? So that's why I eventually dropped Martyr for Valkyrie across the board. Xavier used to be there. Still a great champion, don't get me wrong, but I just think that in terms of Poisoners, Dracomorph is way ahead of the curve. Then we have Duchess, has been there for a while. Prince Kymar was eventually dropped because, I mean, we have Renegade, right? And Renegade can somewhat do the same thing as a Prince Kymar. Again, don't get me wrong, Prince Kymar is an excellent champion. I'm just saying overall, right? Rhodos, Vizier Ovilus was there for a while, then became Trunda. Lysandra was there for a while, also a great champion, but kind of dropped. Then we have Michal. Now, what about all the champions that I did not talk about? What about Cethalia? What about Foley? You know, Xavier, the whole thing. Guys, there are a ton of champions in this game that are excellent, but when I do this list of what seems to be my most wanted, I think that the ones I've highlighted are somewhat what most people want as well. But I need your opinion on that, okay? So it's all right if you disagree. Please let me know in the comments below which champion do you believe should not be on this list and which champions should be there in their place. Still, use this as a point of reference as to somewhat what the end game, or like, you know, if you want to be really competitive in this game, sort of like what kind of champions do you need. And finally, I will point out one more champion which is not on the list yet, but I can guarantee that she will be there. It is the upcoming Lydia. Lydia is going to change the meta. She is going to be amazing. She provides the AoE decreased defense and weaken into 1 skill as well. She's going to be void on top of that. So she's the new ultimate prize. You want to get to Lydia as quickly as possible. Although, you got to do all faction wars now, and that is a huge undertaking. Still, I'm going to leave it at that, right? Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys later.